Story 1. I remember when I was 5. My father brought me to a friend's house and left me unattended. I almost drowned in a pool. Thank God somebody pulled me out of the water. I never told my mother, and it is very possible my father was unfaithful that day. It was typical behavior for him at that time. Story 2. I was sexually assaulted when I was 15. Completely changed my personality in high school. My parents did not understand what was happening. I have lived my adult life never having a serious romantic relationship because the trauma causes a fear of intimacy and attachment issues. I am 45 now. My family has no idea what happened or why I am the way I am. Story 3. That the family heirloom teapot they cherish? Yes, I accidentally shattered it 5 years ago and replaced it with a very similar one from a thrift store. They still have not noticed the subtle duck painted on the bottom. Story 4. I am an egg donor and could have a biological child living somewhere. My family did not approve of the process when I first mentioned it about 7 years ago. However, 2 years after that conversation, I proceeded with it anyway. I do not plan on telling them anytime soon, if ever. Story 5. We used to break into our local school-turned-auction house in the summer, mostly to look around and act like dumb teenagers. One time, we found a way to get into the room where they stored the auction items. We were just exploring when I saw a cute teacup that I thought my mom would like. Silly teenage me took it, but I didn't want her asking where I got it since I didn't have extra cash at the time. So, I placed it in the ditch next to where she does her gardening. She found it, assumed a neighbor or someone had dropped it, and when no one knew anything about it, she ended up keeping it. It's still her favorite cup, and she thinks she just got really lucky. Story 6. The level of bullying I suffered at the hands of my father growing up was severe. When it finally came out to my mother this year, I was uninvited from Christmas. So, I am thinking it might have been better to keep that one bottled in. Story 7. I usually play video games on easy because I enjoy the story and character development more than dying repeatedly. Story 8. As much as I love and cherish my 2 toddlers, as much as I tear up just looking into their eyes or when they tell me they love me, they are constantly making life tougher and more complicated. I constantly have to bottle up my frustration, anxiety, and sadness. Reliable childcare is rare, even among family. The concept of the village has completely broken down since my wife and I were children. I cannot imagine a world without them, but I often wonder what life would be like if we never had kids. It has really only been 4 years, but whatever. I would never say any of this to anybody in my family because I have to be strong for these boys and set a good example. Story 9. I ran a full background check on my stepdad when I was angry and found things, and he is a liar. Unfortunately, my mother is financially dependent on him, and I believe it would be worse if they split up, though they might. He is also a diabetic who refuses to take medication, and I buy him a pie every Wednesday. Here is hoping. Story 10. I have been silently struggling with depression for years. I smile, I joke, I show up when I am needed, but they do not know I have cried myself to sleep more times than I can count. I never told them because I did not want to be a burden. I just learned to carry it quietly. Story 11. I am a functioning person with schizophrenia. I have kept it secret from everyone, even my family, for almost 30 years. Story 12. Basically, I am broke and have been scrambling and hustling for money for years. People must think, gosh, she does a lot of house sitting and landscaping and gardening for her friends. How nice. No, I seriously need to do all these side jobs. My secret is about to be exposed when the bank comes to foreclose on my house. Story 13. I moved 13 hours away because their relationships with their partners and each other are so toxic it causes me to dissociate if I am with them longer than a week. I told them my depression improves in warmer weather to avoid a blow-up. Story 14. Before she died, my mother told my sister she always regretted marrying my father. They were married for over 40 years. Now I am burdened with the secret as well. Story 15. I never told my parents or siblings that I had 3 miscarriages between my first and second child. I just do not want to talk about it. Maybe it will come out eventually. Story 16. My godfather subjected me to abuse for several years. The way I made it stop was by specifying details about my menstrual cycle to him, so he would be profoundly grossed out enough to stop touching me. Everyone always wondered why I mentioned my period a lot to him. It was only to make him stop touching me. Story 17. About 6 years ago, my husband and I separated for a year and were on track for a divorce. Neither of our families knew, and we were often pointed to as an example of what to strive for in a marriage. They did not even know about any arguments we had leading up to the separation. We attended a lot of therapy and worked on all the cracks in our foundation that we found. Story 18. I did a 23andMe DNA test a few years ago. I have an older half-sister that no one knows about. We have the same father. Her mother became pregnant by a service member years before I was born. My half-sister is actually very nice. We talk weekly via Facebook. My parents are divorced, so it is not like it will harm their non-existent relationship. Story 19. My husband and I have been trying to get pregnant for a long time, and it just is not happening. I always said I did not want children, so I did not want to tell anyone we were trying. Turns out that was the right decision. I did not get anyone's hopes up. Story 20. My last deployment was very challenging. I have a few scars and psychological bills that I never told my parents about. Story 21. I am experiencing severe depression and daily anxiety. I am taking antidepressants and feeling close to harming myself at this point. Story 22. My miscarriage in February of 1991 was not a miscarriage. I already had a child under 2 who was still breastfeeding. I had just returned to college, and my husband was overseas for the military conflict known as Operation Desert Storm when I found out I was pregnant again. I was 21 years old. That conflict ended very quickly, but I had no way of knowing it would turn out that way. I was terrified of going through another complicated pregnancy and difficult birth all by myself. It was all just too much, so I did what I thought I needed to do. Less than 2 weeks later, the conflict was over. That experience affected me deeply for a long time. If anyone has seen the end of the film The Mist, it felt similar. I told my husband the truth, and it was the end of our relationship, but my parents still do not know to this day. Story 23. My parents do not know that my wife, age 28, and I, age 29, have been quietly helping my sister, age 19, navigate being lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer in our ultra-conservative family. We have taken her to Pride events, supported her through difficult moments with dating, helped her pick outfits, smuggled her lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer-friendly books, and given her access to our Netflix so she can watch lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer-friendly media. They also do not know that we know they told her she was just going through a phase and that she should stay in the closet. Story 24. I don't use my time as effectively as I did 3 years ago. I have some problems that are causing me to waste part of my potential, even though everyone still mostly believes I will achieve greatness. Still, I am consuming myself from the inside out and don't know if it will actually happen. All products of inner struggles I can and should fight. Story 25. Extended family does not know how difficult our childhood was. The first group of siblings complain about their childhoods too, but think ours was easy. Story 26. I am the only grandchild who knows that my grandfather cheated with the best friend of his eldest daughter. The strangest thing is that every year he celebrated his birthday, he also invited her and her children, whom she had later with her husband. Story 27. Not going to get me. A secret is a secret. Do you want to know how 3 people can keep a secret? 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Story 28. I left my mother and stepfather's house to live with my father because my stepfather strangled me over nothing. When I broke free and ran screaming that he was trying to kill me, my mother looked me in the eye and told me I deserved it. My older sisters never knew, and I never told them because they still loved our mother, and I did not want to ruin their relationship. However, I know my mother died knowing exactly why I had never spoken to her again. Story 29. This is an old story. My parents owned a house on the Gulf of Mexico in Florida. When my wife and children were there without my parents, I dropped a beer in front of the sliding glass door in their master bedroom, which left a stain right where the door opens to the balcony. Fast forward a year, Hurricane Charlie hit their house hard. My father and I went down to check the damage. He had arrived before me and showed me the strength of the storm by pointing out the stain in the carpet, suggesting the storm was so strong it pushed moisture through the sliding glass doors. I said, "That was some storm." I told him about it several years later, and we had a good laugh. Story 30. I am a person with diabetes. I kept it from my parents because I did not want them to worry. They both passed away and never knew. Story 31. I have a more wholesome one. When I was a senior in high school, I heard my mother and father talking one evening when they thought I was asleep. My mother was saying how much she missed my sister and wished they could call and talk more. She then told my father that she thought and hoped when I moved out, I already had plans to move from Washington to Utah, that I would call once a week to chat. So I did. Every week I called my mother and chatted for a few hours. Unfortunately, I had to stop once I had my daughter. I feel bad that I no longer have time for that, but we still text all the time and chat on the phone every couple of weeks. I never told my parents I heard them. I loved knowing that I could make a wish come true for my mother without her thinking I felt obligated or something. Story 32. I was sexually harassed at university, sexually assaulted while overseas, and sexually harassed at work where I was employed in a prestigious government department. I have had one suicide attempt and at least 2 periods of dissociation. Story 33. My daughter had a baby. My older sisters have no idea that I am a grandmother to a happy, healthy, intelligent, and playful boy. Story 34. My dad is a man with low self-esteem who abused my brothers and me, trying to make us into real men. My wife worked for Child Protective Services, and I casually mentioned that my dad used to hit us with belts as some form of punishment to the point we had welts, and that he would hogtie my brother and throw wet rags over his face. There was a lot to unpack in that conversation. I have realized over the years that I had an incredibly difficult home life, despite how well my family was known in the community. Story 35. When I was in elementary school, there was an attempted break-in at the church that scared my parents. They attended meetings at the church at night, and my mom even said, "I don't know if it is safe to be in this part of town at night." The attempted break-in was actually my friend smashing a window because I dared him to. Story 36. I'm a secret follower of the Satanic Temple. My wife and I joined the Satanic Temple several years ago to oppose my mother's religious holiday gatherings in our own way. We have enjoyed our time so much that we have become active volunteers in our area. No one in my family can know, though, or they would probably disown me. I come from a very conservative Midwest family, so it would not go over well. As the saying goes, what they do not know cannot hurt them. Story 37. I did finally come clean, but when my mother turned 60, I baked a space cake for her birthday party. She is usually pretty reserved, but she was dancing all night long and having a blast. Story 38. I have a highly religious family. I pretend that I am still an innocent Christian girl when I talk to them, but in reality, I smoke marijuana, have tattoos, and have not been to church in a long time. I feel that I lead a double life sometimes. I honestly should just be honest with them, but at the same time, my family is very judgmental and loves to cause drama. Story 39. Before my brother and his wife met, we hooked up. He knows and we joke about it. The rest of my family does not. Story 40. My mom is a hardcore fundamentalist Baptist. She has told me on several occasions that me not being a man of God would be her biggest failure. After a lot of therapy, we keep things light, and she still thinks I am devout. I am an atheist married to a woman whose family is into Wicca. Living 4 states away helps. Story 41. I am a 62-year-old female and have a younger brother, who is 60 years old. He moved in with our father, who is 89 years old, back in 2018. He brought 2 pit bulls with him. These dogs were affectionate with humans but aggressive toward any other animals they encountered. Dad had an indoor-only cat that the dogs hated. During the first year my brother was living with Dad, Dad traveled back east to visit his sisters. While he was away, my brother threw a party. People were coming and going, and the dogs managed to get to Dad's cat. They killed the cat. My brother told Dad about the party but said the cat must have gotten out and run away. Dad spent a lot of time contacting shelters and veterinarians, trying to find his cat, but without success. Every time I visited, Dad felt the need to tell me the entire story about the cat. After 7 years, it was clear he was unable to cope with his cat's disappearance. I finally told him the truth about what happened. Dad was quiet for a moment and then said, "Why wouldn't he tell me? Why would he let me keep looking like that?" I said I didn't know, but guess my brother was afraid Dad would make him get rid of his dogs. Dad replied, "He was probably right. I do not feel guilty for revealing the truth about my brother. It made no difference in how enabling Dad is toward him. My brother is currently in jail, and Dad still sends him $50 each week and has $70 worth of groceries shipped to him weekly." Story 42. One day, as a child, I was tasked with getting snacks and fries from a snack bar we visited every week. I had a list of snacks needed for the whole family. However, this was the first time I went alone, so I decided to go rogue and get myself an extra soft drink while I was there. I then learned about receipts when I got home. In a small panic, I denied ever getting the drink, so my dad called them, demanding either his money back or the drink he paid for. The snack bar told him I had already received the drink. My dad chose to believe me, escalated the whole thing, and never ordered there again. Back then, I was happy I got away with my free drink. Years later, I realized those people lost business because I was too afraid to tell my parents about it. Story 43. I like to use cannabis. I am not a heavy user, just like to take a few hits from a blunt now and then. Yes, I have a job that is safety sensitive, so I was drug tested often, but I always passed. That is my secret. Story 44. When my mother dies, I will never visit my hometown again. I am tired of the homophobia and the transphobia. If I cannot be myself, I will not go. Story 45. My first marriage lasted 7 years. The dog revealed my secret because he tore up the mail that contained date changes and information for court. Story 46. Instead of sharing to feel better and lighter, I worry about their reaction because it is always overwhelming. I have to handle everything myself instead of getting support, so I deal with things on my own. Story 47. I left it at the house through vacation rental by owner, and a friend said they had grabbed it, but that was not true. They were going to contact the homeowner and said they had, but they had not. I do not know why. I was upset about the lack of transparency, to be honest, but moved past it. By the time I was able to get the homeowner's contact information, they had already had cleaners come, and they apparently collect abandoned items to donate, but could also sell them. I hope that, through some twist of fate, it really is the old blanket, but there is no way to know. Story 48. There is a good chance I am on the autism spectrum. I have been researching it heavily for about 2 years, but I have had my suspicions since the beginning of high school. I really want to make sure that this is not me trying to self-diagnose or subconsciously making an excuse for my behaviors throughout my life. I have found many of my tendencies in conversation, general interaction, and thinking align with those diagnosed with autism as adults. I have also found that many of my relationships with friends and people at school and church involve me masking to some degree. I am currently exploring what a diagnosis for autism would involve, but I do not want to alarm anyone. Story 49. I did not stop my attempt for them. I stopped because I did not want our dogs to think I had abandoned them. Story 50. I hate when my father talks about growing up poor. It only makes me resent my grandmother. I love them both, though. Story 51. It has only been 3 years, but I wish every day that my cancer would come back so I can leave this awful world. Story 52. That I am a leftist. They know I am pro-choice, that I support lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people living their lives as they wish and having the same rights as everyone else, that I think Donald Trump and the right-wing media are causing irreparable harm to our country, which I love, and that I support more regulation and taxation of big business, but they have not connected the dots. They imagine leftists as irrational, unintelligent, American-hating, evil people. They do not see me that way, so I can express my leftist views openly around them, and as long as I do not say, I am a leftist, they will never know. Story 53. I have very difficult feelings toward my parents. My father struggles with alcohol addiction, And my mother tends to show interest in me only when she needs financial support. Story 54. I fabricated my high school overseas examination results because I did not tell my parents about the exam results certificate and forgot to tell them until the day I was supposed to retrieve it. I have kept it for 16 years and did not tell anyone. Only my then-girlfriend knew my results and understood the difficulties I experienced studying there. I had 8 subjects in total. My fabricated grades were 5 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C. My actual grades were 1 A, 2 B's, 3 C's, 1 D, and 1 E. I excelled in mathematics but failed history. Story 55. My dad sleeps with sex workers. I found a text-free app on an iPad he lent me, which is how I found out. I confronted him about it. He tried to explain himself and begged me not to tell my stepmother. It weighed heavily on my conscience for a long time, but I struggled to figure out how anyone would be better off if I told her and disrupted their lives, her security, their retirement, and so on. I never said anything, and it has been about 6 years now. Story 56. My ex-husband has a daughter that nobody, not even his family, knows about. She is a few months older than our oldest daughter and looks exactly like her. Story 57. I am incredibly queer and also had an abortion in my early 20s. They would not react well to finding out either. Story 58. I gave my father's high school ring to my first crush in 6th grade. When she broke up with me while we were ice skating, she slid the ring across the pond. I was so heartbroken I just watched it sink and never told my father. Story 59. I wanted to harm myself. I am glad I told somebody because if I had not, I would not be here right now. Suicide is a temporary feeling. If you are having these thoughts, please tell someone that you love. It is worth it. Story 60. Every year on my birthday, I spend the day alone to decide whether I want to keep living or end it all. I have been fighting for 41 years now, and it becomes harder every year to continue hoping for something to hold on to. Story 61. I was sexually assaulted in college. After the hospital and police convinced me not to press charges because I was drugged at a fraternity party and underage drinking was involved, I felt no one else would listen. It has been 25 years, and my family believes I just had too much fun in college, which is why my grades declined. Story 62. I fell through the ice in a pond at about 12 years old. I broke the ice to get out and ran home, stripping off freezing clothes as I went. I was naked by the time I got home. I lay down in a warm bath for an hour. I told no one. I told the story to my mother at about 30 years old, and she was very upset. Story 63. It is more of a secret that has not happened yet, but once I have found a new job out of state, I plan to stop all contact with my family, my mother, siblings, and others. I have taken small steps like deleting them from social media, which has sometimes made things awkward. I only maintained contact for my father, who I was very close to and who was very supportive of my career and life. My mother and siblings are not supportive. My mother, who has become an alcoholic since my father's death and has financial problems because of it, recently suggested that I get a job outside of my career to pay for her home improvement projects while she spends her checks and my father's Veteran Affairs checks on alcohol, cigarettes, junk food, and casino trips. In summary, I plan to stop contact with my family as soon as I move. Nobody knows it is coming. Story 64. A gay friend said he had sex with my father-in-law. I chuckle to myself when I see him because he is a judgmental redneck who supports the right to bear arms and is a supporter of Donald Trump. Story 65. I am not going to say because it will remain hidden from them until I die, but it is really starting to bother me much longer than 5 years. Story 66. I have been in sugar relationships as a sugar daddy for over 10 years. It is just very hard to find an above-average-looking girlfriend in the Bay Area compared to other parts of the United States or the world. I am not proud of paying someone for companionship, but it is what it is. Story 67. The uncle that everybody cherishes is a disgusting, perverted pedophile. I have not told my father because he will quite literally harm the man. I have had to go to family events, face him, and be polite every single time, approximately 14 years ago. Story 68. A guy I sneaked out of my grandmother's house to see accidentally knocked over her mailbox. Story 69. I have struggled with substance abuse every day for the last 15 years, and nobody knows. Ask me more because it is mind-boggling. Story 70. I have kept the secret from my family for 50 years. When I was 12 and my older sister was in high school, she was doing a fundraiser where she was selling candy bars. She had left the envelope with all the money in her bedroom, and I went in and stole it. She thought she had lost it, and my parents had to come up with the money to replace the amount she had raised. I have never told anybody. I don't even think I ever told any of my friends, girlfriends, or my wife. I was a sneaky little person. Story 71. My family has no idea I was a sex worker in college or that I am heavily involved in the kink community on a national level, including competitions. I am pretty sure their Presbyterian hearts would wither at the thought. Story 72. Where are my queer atheists raised in conservative Christian homes? Happy Pride, everyone. Don't forget to adjust your social media filters to keep your family out of your personal posts. Story 73. Oh geez, a few. Mostly due to sexuality and mental health. My parents fell down the Fox News and Make America Great Again rabbit hole, and as much as I love them, you just can't talk to them about a lot of things. Oh, and despite their insistence that I will get more conservative politically as I get older, I am actually leaning more left every year. Story 74. I was the golden boy in school during middle school and early high school. This only became obvious to me when I became the main topic in every girl's circles and was treated differently by every girl. All because I was talented and successful. However, I never told either my mom or my dad. I realized how toxic that dynamic was years later, and it has contributed to my friend circle today being almost exclusively women. Many people, especially girls, considered it an accomplishment to have me like them, even if it was just as a friend. Story 75. I have many secrets. I used to have a serious drinking problem and frequently abused drugs, but now I only use them occasionally. I have been sexually assaulted by 4 men. One of them was a friend of my brother, and they met him. I used to smoke cigarettes and throw them under the porch in high school. When I was 17, I would sneak out to walk to my boyfriend's house down the road. Story 76. I don't think I have one anymore. For a long time, I never told anyone in my family that I had a girlfriend and that she had died. Actually, I don't think I told anyone at all for at least 3 years. I told my mother 2 or 3 years ago because she said I was old enough to be in relationships. I basically wasn't allowed to until university. My father said 35 once, but it may have been a joke. I kept it a secret from my family for 8 years. My father still doesn't know. He wouldn't care anyway. I told a few of my cousins last year, I think, since they were talking about relationships and it had already been 10 years anyway. Story 77. Being a fanfiction writer. For ironic context, I am asexual. It is not really something I kept hidden. It was just something that never got brought up. It shocked my mom because, asexual. But now I have become the de facto bearer of cursed internet knowledge in my household. Needless to say, explaining what Wincest is and why people lust over Optimus Prime has been hysterical. Story 78. I'm not really a liar. I was just never asked the questions, so I never had to lie. One secret came out last Saturday. My brother confided in me that my dad had cheated on my mom many years ago. He told me about 7 years ago and I never told her. I'm relieved that it finally came out. I didn't like keeping that from my mom. They have been together since 1978. Story 79. My wife and I have been swingers for more than 20 years. I have seen more encounters involving her than the New York City subway system has trains. Story 80. I smoked cannabis until I had a medical emergency. I was so high on medication that I told my doctor in the intensive care unit that I smoked it when she asked, and it was written in my file. My parents were upset. I was 31 at that time. Story 81. My mom and one of my sisters, the golden child, drive me absolutely nuts and stress me out. Family gatherings are stressful for me, and I am exhausted afterward. My mom does not see how the way she acts and treats the golden child differently from me and our other sister hurts our grandma, my mom's mother. She also does not know that I inform our grandma of every detail regarding fights that occur, which I have done since I was a teenager. There is more, but I do not know where I would post this. Story 82. My birth family does not know I am bisexual. There is really no need for them to know, so I have not told them. Story 83. The full extent of side effects from my husband's back surgery. Granted, we do not discuss those body parts with family anyway, as that would be unusual. Story 84. I have never had edibles. What is the experience like when you know you will meet someone you do not like? Is it fun? Do you suddenly like her? Or do you just not care about her? I am just curious. Story 85. When I was a child, my parents left my brother and me alone with the Christmas presents one evening. We agreed we would open one present and rewrap it. It is important to know that my mother is very crafty, and I guess that year she wanted to pass her love of crafts down to us. I opened a flower-making kit. My brother opened a block of wax. The look on his face was unforgettable. It said, "This is going to be the worst Christmas ever." She still does not know. Story 86. I was diagnosed as high-functioning autistic when I turned 30 some years ago. It was a surprise and actually explained a lot about myself. At 36, I tentatively broached the subject with my mom, but she immediately shut it down, refused to acknowledge what I was saying, and changed the subject, as she was clearly uncomfortable. I don't know if she thought I was going to blame her for not recognizing it years ago when I was a socially awkward teenage introvert who never had to study, rarely picked up on social cues, walked on the balls of my feet, stymied during movies and TV shows, or that I can go months without talking to anyone and then pick up right where we left off as if no time had passed. That wasn't why I brought it up. It was mostly out of curiosity and maybe a little to see if I could get better at social situations, more normal. It doesn't matter. I let the whole conversation go, and we haven't spoken about it since. Story 87. I have never been able to express what Tammy has done to me throughout my entire life. Story 88. I had a major medical issue in college, but I kept it from my parents because they would have made the entire situation about themselves. My close friends really stepped up to help me through the appointments, and I took out student loans to pay for the medical bills out of pocket. 20 years later, no one in my family except my husband knows. I am no contact with my parents because obviously they have a multitude of issues. Story 89. I absolutely despise my mother for divorcing my dad over unreasonable reasons she got from her therapist. I keep saying it is none of my business, but I will forever resent her. Story 90. Dad left when I was a kid. I never met him. His daughter reached out to me a few years ago. She is a sweet, innocent little girl who did nothing wrong. There is an 8-year age gap between us. She knows her dad is difficult because he had a son he never mentioned. She found out about me on her own. I can explain how if asked. The world is small, to put it that way. What she does not know is that her mom was my mom's maid of honor and best friend. They were having an affair, and she betrayed her pregnant best friend. My sister must never know what her mother did. I do not want to destroy the relationship with both her parents. Her dad seriously fell in her estimation once she found out about me, and I do not want to mess up what she has with her mom. Story 91. A baby rabbit was frozen with fear in our yard because our dog almost caught it. Thankfully, it was gone the next day, and we all thought it had escaped unharmed. That afternoon, I went to do pool maintenance and found it floating in the skimmer basket. It is the only secret I have kept from my wife in our marriage. To this day, she thinks that Bunny is or was roaming around our neighborhood somewhere. Story 92. That my mother was cheating on my father for half their marriage. The affair was with our family doctor, who my father still sees as his main general practitioner. When they first divorced, he was in a bad place and I worried he might cause a scene with the doctor and get himself in trouble. Now that he has moved on and is doing better all these years later, it just does not seem worth it to hurt him like that. Story 93. I was a casual smoker and have not smoked since around February 2022. Nobody knows that I smoked, and nobody knows that I quit. Story 94. Picked out and planned a place to punch my own ticket, chickened out at the last minute, just sat in the car for a few hours, and went back. I decided to move back to my hometown after that. Story 95. I fabricated my high school overseas examination results because I did not tell my parents about the exam results certificate and forgot to inform them until the day I was supposed to retrieve it. I have kept it for 16 years and did not tell anyone. Only my then-girlfriend knew my results and understood the difficulties I went through studying there. I took 8 subjects in total. My fabricated grades were 5 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C. My actual grades were 1 A, 2 B's, 3 C's, 1 D, and 1 E. I excelled in mathematics but failed history. Story 96. I fabricated my high school overseas exam results that I was supposed to receive at a certain date. I did not tell my parents about it. I kept this secret for 16 years and did not tell anyone except my ex-girlfriend, who understood the difficulties I faced studying there. 8 subjects. My fabricated grades: 5 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C. My actual grades: 1 A, 2 B's, 3 C's, 1 D, and 1 E. Story 97. That is my biological half-sister. I told no one. She finds me cool. I just needed to know she is happy and healthy. Story 98. I think I am getting too used to staying home after 5 years of working from home. I am not going out much. My weight is dropping 10% at a time, dropping often. Story 99. I have not been there for 5 years, and I do not think I will ever tell my parents about it. My brother is obsessed with ponies. He has ponytails, stockings, and subscribes to adult channels featuring painted ponies. I do not know how to explain this or tell my parents. Even thinking about it is unpleasant. I am writing through a translator. Story 100. Mine's not close to you all, but it's my music taste. I just don't feel like they need to know. I can't stand country music either. They love it. Story 101. I have been sneaking into my sister's Netflix account to binge-watch trashy shows to change her feed. 5 years later, she still does not know. Story 102. I make a lot of money. If they knew how much I make, they would definitely be asking for some. They are terrible with money. Story 103. I did not know the dictionary held special memories for my mother because her father gave it to her. I gave it to a friend before I moved away. I seriously regret it. She does not know where it went. Story 104. I am an addict and still recovering. They attributed my change in personality to depression, and I never corrected them. I am 3 years clean. Story 105. I'm pretty sure my older male cousin sexually assaulted me when I was a child and he was a teenager. I cannot prove it, of course, because I was very young, but every so often I have dreams and flashbacks of the incident. I have never mentioned it to my family. I think they knew and decided never to bring it up for fear that I would remember. Story 106. When my dad passes one day, I will be happy to finally be rid of my stepfamily. He thinks I love them, but they are unpleasant, and I hate that he decided to raise his wife's children instead of my brother and me. Story 107. I bought a house. I choose not to be around my family because they are not good for my mental health. They do not know where I live. It is peaceful. Story 108. Before I came out, I was hyper-aware of homophobic comments people made in my presence. Many of my family members and friends made many such comments which deeply affected me, but they have completely forgotten this and talk about how they were always accepting of gay people. I choose not to remind them. Some would become defensive and accuse me of lying, and it is not worth the conflict since I am not close to them anyway. Others would feel genuinely guilty and sad for hurting me, and I do not see the point of dredging that up. Story 109. I had a pretty bad diet when I lived alone. After getting laid off from my job and my ex breaking up with me within a month of each other, I was at the lowest point of my life. I mostly relied on frozen foods and rarely cooked. I think the only thing that kept me from completely letting myself go was going for walks at the park with my relatives every weekday evening. Story 110. When I was 16 years old, I launched the family minivan going about 60 kilometers per hour. It was raining very hard, and the road that I thought went straight was actually a steep incline into a parking lot. I definitely thought I was down to 3 wheels when I landed. Turns out I still had 4, and it drove perfectly. 3 months later, my dad came home from the dealership and told me there was $1,500 of suspension damage on the vehicle. While panicking, I managed to say, Really? Because it drives fine. He replied, yes, that's what I said. So I just left it. My parents had that vehicle for at least another 5 years and never fixed it. We even drove cross-country in it once after that. I am 35 now and will probably never reveal the truth. Story 111. I told my family I was a freelance editor. They do not know I have been editing my own solo content with a ring light and a playful expression. Story 112. I came close to ending my life at 17. I regret this now and would be mortified if my parents ever found out how close I had been and what lengths I had gone to. I would never want them to think that their love was not enough. Story 113. I was sexually assaulted by the neighbor repeatedly when I was 10 or 11 years old. That was 20 years ago. My sister had a big crush on him and refused to believe he was anything but perfect in her eyes. Story 114. I might be a lesbian. I know I am not heterosexual. I just know that as long as I am not exactly straight, it will remain a secret. Story 115. I am a single mother by choice. This is a secret I share with my son. 5 years ago, I had a sudden heart attack at home. My son, who was 9 at the time, called an ambulance. I was in the hospital for a week while my son stayed with a friend of mine. I recovered fully. I haven't told anyone in my family because they are all toxic and would create a lot of drama, making my heart attack all about them. I didn't want to call them when I was at the hospital, as I didn't want to turn my illness into their source of drama. Even today, no one in my family knows this happened, and I thank God often that I survived. Story 116. When I was 16, I started selling any pictures or videos people would request in a desperate attempt to get the attention and validation I was not receiving from my own parents. I stopped at 18 but was obviously groomed numerous times and even had an in-real-life experience from a partner I met selling on the app formerly known as Twitter. I plan to tell my parents one day, but not until I have moved out of the house. I am too scared they will go through all my things and think I still do it. Story 117. I dropped the takeout pizza face down in the garage. I just scooped it up and put it back in the box. They never asked why I ate salad that night. Story 118. I'm a goody two-shoes. I don't think I have any secrets from my family. I mean, there are things they don't know just because nobody knows everything about their family. But I've never done anything I needed to hide from my family. Story 119. It is not really a secret. Most are just narcissists who do not listen to your story, and you cannot get a word in edgewise. They will find out the hard way that they are targets of a domestic terrorist group and are being trafficked along with their identities. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.